The evening air was cool, quiet, and heavy, with that peaceful stillness that comes just before night fully settles. Margaret sat alone in her living room, the soft hum of the refrigerator and the ticking clock filling the silence. The lamp beside her gave off a warm golden light that made the room feel smaller. Cozier, though, it also reminded her how empty it had become. Since her husband's passing 2 years ago, the house had felt like a shell of what it once was. The laughter, the footsteps, the daily noise of life, all gone. Now it was just her and the silence. She was knitting again, though half the time she forgot what pattern she was following. The scarf in her lap had been started months ago for no one in particular. Maybe it was for herself, something to keep her hands busy when her mind wandered to places she didn't want it to go. Outside, the wind picked up slightly, brushing against the windows. The sound made her look up for a moment, as if expecting someone to come through the door. Then she heard footsteps down the hall. Margaret blinked and smiled faintly. Her son Michael was home early. Usually he stayed in his room after work, either on calls or catching up on something for the office. But tonight the sound of his steps was steady, purposeful. When he appeared at the doorway of the living room, she couldn't help but smile wider. "Well, this is rare," she said, putting her knitting aside. "You actually left your laptop behind." Michael laughed softly as he walked in, his tall frame moving with that relaxed confidence she'd missed seeing for years. "Yeah, I figured I'd give my eyes a break before they fall out of my head." "Good idea. You're starting to look like one of those computer people who never see sunlight." She teased and he chuckled, taking a seat on the couch beside her. For a while, neither of them spoke. It was the kind of silence that wasn't uncomfortable, just unfamiliar. Margaret wasn't used to sharing this space anymore. After her husband passed and Michael moved away, she'd learned to fill her evenings with quiet routines. But now with her son sitting there, something felt different. Michael glanced around, his gaze soft. "You know," he said finally, "I forgot how much I used to hate this room when I was a kid." Margaret turned to him, amused. "Hate it? This was your favorite place to build Lego cities and crash toy cars into my furniture." He smiled. "Yeah, but this is also where you made me do my homework. I used to sit right over there at the table, pretending I was focused, while you'd watch me from the couch, pretending not to notice." She laughed, a genuine laugh that warmed her chest. "Oh, I noticed. I just wanted to see how long you could fake it." He laughed too, shaking his head. "You always caught me eventually." For a few moments, the laughter filled the room like sunlight breaking through clouds. Then, when it faded, the silence that followed felt gentler, almost nostalgic. Michael leaned back, exhaling slowly. "It's weird," he said quietly. "Being back here after so long, it feels smaller somehow, but also warmer. Like I remember it differently now." Margaret looked around the room. The same beige walls, the same family photos on the shelves, the same everything. Yet, in that moment, she understood what he meant. "I think we remember spaces by the people who fill them," she said softly. "When they're gone, it feels like the house changes." Michael looked at her, his expression softening. "You mean Dad?" She nodded slightly, her gaze drifting toward an old photo on the mantel, a picture of her husband holding Michael as a baby, both smiling at the camera. "Yes, him. It's strange, isn't it? You spend decades with someone and then suddenly they're just a memory you keep trying to hold on to." Michael followed her gaze, his jaw tightening slightly. "I miss him too," he said. Margaret's voice trembled just a little when she replied, "I know you do." For a while they just sat there, listening to the quiet rhythm of the house. There was comfort in it, even if it hurt a little. The silence wasn't empty anymore. It was shared. Then Michael leaned forward, his elbows resting on his knees, and looked at her with a serious expression. "Mom," he said, "I've been meaning to tell you something. It's nothing bad, but I think you should know why I really came back home." Margaret tilted her head, confused. "You told me it was because of your work transfer, didn't you?" He nodded slowly. "That's what I said. Yeah, but that wasn't the real reason." Her heart skipped a beat. "Then what was it?" Michael looked down at his hands for a moment before answering. "I moved back because I was worried about you." Margaret blinked, caught off guard. "Worried about me? He nodded. Yeah, after Dad passed, I felt like I wasn't here enough. You'd call and I could hear in your voice that you were trying to sound okay. But I knew you were alone. And he paused, taking a breath. I couldn't keep pretending that it was fine. His voice carried no guilt, only quiet honesty. Margaret stared at him, emotion welling in her chest. Oh, Michael, she whispered. You didn't have to uproot your life for me. I didn't, he said, his tone calm but certain. I needed it too. I needed to be home again, to feel something real. I think I lost that for a while out there. For a moment, the room was silent except for the hum of the heater. Margaret's eyes filled with tears, but she tried to blink them away. You always were the sentimental one, she said softly, smiling through the emotion. Michael smiled too, though his eyes glistened. Guess I got that from you. She reached out and placed her hand on his. His hand was larger now, stronger, but the gesture felt familiar, grounding. You've grown up into a man your father would have been proud of, she said. He squeezed her hand gently. That means more than you know. They sat like that for a while, not needing words. The bond between them had always been strong, but in that moment it felt deeper, built not just on love, but on shared grief, shared survival. Finally, Margaret broke the silence with a shaky laugh. You know, for someone who came home to make sure I wasn't lonely, you sure have managed to make me cry. Michael chuckled softly. I'll take that as proof I'm doing something right. The laughter eased the heaviness between them. For the first time in a long time, Margaret felt a strange kind of peace. The pain of the past was still there, but it didn't feel so sharp anymore. It felt like something she could hold without breaking. Michael glanced around the room again. You ever think about selling this place? The question startled her. Selling? No, I couldn't. Every corner of this house has a story. He nodded thoughtfully. I figured you'd say that. But if you ever do, maybe we could find something smaller. Something cozy, closer to town. A place that feels like a new start. Margaret looked at him, touched by the suggestion. A new start, she repeated. It's been a long time since I thought about something like that. Chew it, he said quietly. You deserve to think about yourself again. Something in his tone caught her, the tenderness of it, the care. It reminded her that even though the years had changed them, the love between them hadn't faded. As she sat there, watching her son, this grown man who still looked at her with the same kindness he had as a child, she realized that maybe life wasn't done surprising her. The clock ticked softly. The room glowed with warmth. Margaret felt the stillness again, but this time it didn't feel lonely. It felt alive, as if something within her had woken up. Then Michael spoke again, quietly but firmly. Mom, can I ask you something personal? She turned to him. Of course. He hesitated, his eyes meeting hers. Do you ever think about what makes you happy now? Not what used to, but now. The question caught her off guard. Happiness. She hadn't thought about that word in a long time. I'm not sure, she admitted softly. Maybe I've forgotten how to answer that. Michael gave a small, warm smile. Then maybe it's time we figure it out together. The way he said we gently, sincerely filled the room with something unspoken but powerful. It wasn't romance or sorrow. It was connection. Two people bound by love and loss, finding their way back to living again. And as Margaret looked at her son, sitting beside her in that quiet living room filled with years of memories, she realized something simple but true. Sometimes life begins again in the smallest, most ordinary moments. That night, as the clock struck 9, she whispered to herself, maybe this house isn't too quiet after all. And somewhere deep inside, she felt the first spark of peace she hadn't felt in years, the kind that comes when love, in its purest form, finds its way home. The soft ticking of the clock filled the quiet living room as Laura poured herself another cup of tea. The glow from the lamp painted everything in a warm golden hue, wrapping the evening in calm. Just as she settled back into her armchair, she heard footsteps, steady, familiar, and yet unexpected at this hour. It was Ryan, her son. He rarely came to visit unannounced, especially on a weekday evening. "Hey, Mom," he said with a small smile, stepping into the living room. His voice carried that mix of warmth and hesitation that made Laura's heart tighten. He looked tired but calm, his eyes thoughtful, as if something weighed on his mind. "Ryan, this is a surprise," she said, setting her cup down. "Is everything all right?" He nodded but didn't sit right away. Instead, he stood by the window, staring out into the night. The reflection of the city lights shimmered against the glass, and Laura watched him carefully. He looked older than she remembered, more serious, more grown. Maybe it was the way life had pressed responsibility onto him so young. "I just needed to talk," Ryan finally said, turning toward her dot. Laura motioned for him to sit. "Then sit, sweetheart. I'm listening." He sat on the couch across from her and ran his fingers through his hair. A habit he had since childhood whenever he struggled to find words. "You ever feel like you're living a life that doesn't feel like yours?" he asked quietly. Laura blinked, surprised. "What do you mean?" "I mean," he sighed, "I wake up, go to work, pay bills, talk to people, but it feels like I'm just existing, not living. I thought I had everything figured out, but now I'm not sure I even know who I am anymore." Laura felt a pang in her chest. It wasn't the first time she'd heard someone speak like this, but hearing it from her own son hit deeper. "Ryan," she said softly, "you've been carrying too much on your shoulders. You always have." He gave a small, sad smile. "You sound just like Dad used to." The mention of her late husband made Laura's breath hitch for a second. She smiled faintly, hiding the ache in her heart. "Your father believed in you more than anyone, Ryan, and so do I." He looked at her, his eyes searching, as if trying to find something more than comforts, something honest. "You always say that, Mom. But what if I made choices I can't take back? What if I lost myself along the way?" Laura leaned forward. "Then you find your way back. That's what life is about, learning, losing, and finding again." He stared at her, his eyes softening, a flicker of relief in his gaze. But something else lingered there, something she couldn't name. A quiet emotion that made the air feel heavy, almost tender. The silence stretched between them. Only the ticking clock and the hum of the fridge filled the background. Laura reached over and gently placed her hand on his. It was an instinctive motherly gesture. But as she did, Ryan looked down at their joined hands, then up at her face, and the look he gave her caught her off guard. It wasn't wrong. It wasn't inappropriate. It was just emotional, deep. Like he was seeing her not just as his mother, but as a personal woman with her own past, her own emotions, her own struggles. For a moment, Laura didn't know what to say. She could see the pain in his eyes, the exhaustion of trying to be strong for everyone but himself. "You've always been stronger than you think," she whispered. Ryan's lips twitched into a faint smile. "Maybe because I had you." Laura smiled too, but her heart felt strangeful and heavy at the same time. He squeezed her hand lightly, and in that quiet moment, something unspoken passed between them: love, gratitude, maybe even regret. But it wasn't something to be feared. It was the kind of moment that happens when two souls who've carried each other through life finally stop pretending everything's fine and just see each other. She took a deep breath. "Ryan, listen. I know life feels confusing right now, but I promise you things will settle. You're doing your best, and that's enough." He looked at her, his voice barely above a whisper. "Sometimes I wish I could go back to when you used to make everything feel okay." Laura smiled sadly. "Oh, sweetheart, I wish I could too." They sat in silence again, their hands still resting together. The moment felt fragile but comforting. After a few minutes, Ryan leaned back, letting out a slow breath. "You know, I came here thinking I needed answers. But maybe I just needed to be here with you." Laura's heart warmed. "You don't need to have all the answers, Ryan. You just need to remember you're not alone." He nodded, his gaze soft. "You really believe things can get better?" "I do," she said firmly, "because they always do, eventually." The clock ticked on. The air in the room had shifted. It felt lighter somehow. Ryan stood after a while and looked around the living room, as if seeing it for the first time in years. You haven't changed anything, he noted. Laura chuckled. Old habits die hard. This room's seen everything: your birthdays, your late night talks, even your teenage arguments. He grinned faintly. And you never kicked me out. I thought about it once or twice, she teased, and they both laughed for the first time that night. The tension between them melted away, replaced by the simple, timeless bond of a mother and her son. But deep inside, Laura couldn't shake the feeling that this night had changed something. Ryan had come to her not just as a son seeking comfort, but as a man searching for understanding. And in his eyes, she saw both the boy he used to be and the man he was becoming when he finally left. The house fell quiet again. Laura walked to the window and watched his car drive away. The street lights shimmered against the rain-soaked pavement, and she felt both proud and wistful. That night, as she sat alone in the living room, she thought about everything he'd said: the fear, the confusion, the longing for purpose. And she realized that life doesn't stop teaching lessons, no matter your age. Maybe Ryan had reminded her of that. She looked around the familiar space, smiled softly, and whispered to herself, "You raised a good man. Laura, you really did." But just as she turned off the lamp, her phone buzzed with a message from Ryan. "Mom, there's something else I didn't tell you. Can we talk tomorrow?" Her heart skipped. She sat back down, eyes fixed on the screen. The night, it seemed, wasn't done unfolding. The morning sunlight slipped through the curtains, casting soft gold on the living room floor. Laura sat at the table with her tea, staring at her phone. Ryan's message from the night before kept flashing in her mind. "Mom, there's something else I didn't tell you. Can we talk tomorrow?" The words felt heavy, uncertain. What could he possibly need to say that he couldn't share last night? Her thoughts were interrupted by the sound of a car pulling up outside. She looked out the window and saw Ryan stepping out, dressed casually, holding 2 paper cups of coffee. That was always his peace offering when he had something serious to say. When he entered, Laura smiled faintly. "You didn't have to bring coffee." He grinned, setting the cups down. "You know me, I'm better at talking when there's caffeine involved." Laura chuckled softly, but her eyes watched him closely. He looked restless, his shoulders slightly tense. Whatever he had to say was important. She motioned for him to sit beside her. "Okay," she said gently. "You've got that look again? What's on your mind?" Ryan sighed and rubbed the back of his neck. "I thought a lot after last night. About everything. About you, about life." He hesitated, searching for the right words. "I realized I've been running for years, working, pretending I'm fine, avoiding things I didn't want to face. But talking to you, it made me remember who I am, and who you are to me." Laura's heart softened, but a small worry stirred in her chest. "Ryan, you don't have to explain everything. I know life hasn't been easy lately." "No, Mom," he said quietly. "I want to explain." He looked at her, his expression raw and open. "You've been my anchor since Dad passed. You held everything together when I couldn't even face what we lost. And I know I never said it enough, but I owe everything to you. You're not just my mother, you're my reminder of what love really means." Laura blinked, caught off guard by the emotion in his tone. She tried to smile, but her throat tightened. "Oh, sweetheart, you don't owe me anything. That's what family does. We carry each other when we need to." Ryan nodded, but didn't look away. "I know. But last night when we talked, I realized something. You're the only person who truly sees me. Everyone else sees what I pretend to be, but you see through it." Laura reached out and took his hand again, the same way she had the night before. "That's because I've known you your whole life. I know your heart." He squeezed her hand gently, his voice quiet but firm. "Then you know what I'm trying to say?" Laura paused, unsure what he meant. "Ryan," he exhaled, his eyes soft and honest. "I've been so lost since Dad died. I thought I could just move on, work more, distract myself, but I couldn't. I missed home. I missed feeling understood. And when I'm here, when I talk to you, I feel at peace. I feel safe." Laura's chest tightened with emotion. She knew the kind of emptiness he spoke of. She'd lived it too. Losing her husband had left a hole nothing could fill. For years, she focused on surviving, not living. Maybe that's why Ryan's words hit her so deeply. They mirrored her own heart. She took a slow breath. Ryan, we both lost a part of ourselves when he passed. But that doesn't mean life is over for us. We just have to learn how to live again. He nodded slowly. That's just it. You're still here and you've been so strong. I don't know how you do it. She smiled faintly. I pretend. Most days I pretend I'm stronger than I am. Ryan's gaze softened even more. You don't have to pretend around me. The honesty in his voice struck something deep in her. There was no judgment, no barrier, just a hearts quietly acknowledging each other's pain. Laura looked away for a moment, staring at the framed photo of her family on the mantel. I used to sit here every night after you moved out, she said softly. I'd talk to your dad's picture, tell him how proud he'd be of you. But I never thought about what I needed. I think I forgot how to take care of myself. Ryan reached out, his tone gentle. Maybe it's time you start again. She smiled, though her eyes glistened. Maybe it is. The room fell quiet again, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was the kind of silence that carried understanding, like both of them were finally saying the things they'd been too afraid to speak. Ryan leaned back slightly, exhaling. I've been thinking of taking some time off work. Maybe stay around here for a while. Help you with the house, maybe fix the garden. It's been a mess since Dad left. Laura laughed softly. You're not wrong about that. The weeds are winning. He smiled, and for the first time in a long time, there was light in his expression. Then maybe I can win a few battles. She nodded. I'd like that. For a moment, she saw the little boy he used to be, the one who used to run barefoot in that same garden, laughing as his father chased him with a garden hose. Her heart ached with nostalgia, but also hope. Later that day, they sat outside on the porch, coffee cups in hand. The air was cool, carrying the faint scent of pine from the nearby woods. Ryan looked thoughtful. You know, I never realized how quiet this place gets. It used to drive me crazy when I was younger. Now it feels like peace. Laura smiled. That's what age does. It teaches you to find peace in what used to feel like emptiness. He nodded, then turned toward her. You think I'll be okay? I know you will, she said with certainty. Because you're learning to feel again. That's where healing begins. He smiled faintly, his eyes glistening. You always know what to say, Laura chuckled. That's because I've had practice. You weren't exactly an easy kid. He laughed. You mean I was trouble? Maybe a little, she teased. Their laughter lingered in the air, warm and soft, as the day faded into evening. The porch light cast a gentle glow around them. Ryan glanced at his mother again, his expression calm. You know, I didn't come here just to talk about myself. Laura tilted her head. No, he hesitated. I wanted to make sure you're okay too. You always focus on me, but you deserve more than just quiet nights and memories. You deserve to be happy again. Her heart caught in her throat. No one had said that to her in years. Oh, Ryan. He smiled softly. Promise me you'll try. You've given so much of yourself to others. It's time to live for you. She looked at him, her eyes shining with pride and emotion. I promise. For a long time they sat together, the sound of crickets filling the evening air. It wasn't a dramatic ending. It wasn't filled with grand gestures or tears. It was just Ryla, mother and son, finally reconnecting after years of distance. Learning that love doesn't always need to be loud to be powerful. As Ryan got ready to leave that night, he turned back at the door. You know, Mom, maybe what I needed wasn't a new start. Maybe I just needed to come home. Laura smiled softly, her voice barely above a whisper. Then you're right where you belong. He hugged her before stepping out, and she stood by the door long after he'd gone, feeling lighter than she had in years. The night felt peaceful, filled with a quiet kind of joy, the kind that comes from healing, understanding, and love that doesn't fade with time. For the first time in a long while, Laura didn't feel lonely. She felt whole, and as she turned off the lights and went to bed, she whispered to herself, "Sometimes the words that change everything aren't loud. They're simply spoken with love."